Welcome to Speak Out. I'm Sandy Galef, a member of the New York State Assembly representing parts of northern Westchester and parts of Putnam County. And today we have our very action-oriented Westchester County DA with us, Anthony Scarpino, but better known as Tony, to be here today to talk about what is going on in Westchester County in the District Attorney's Office. And it's such an important office. And can you just, you've been there now for pretty much 2 years.
2 years, yes.
And, but you had done a lot of other things before that. Can you just kind of give us a little, how did you get to be a DA?
Well, I'm a Mount Vernon kid, born and raised, went to Mount Vernon High School, and my goal was always to get involved in law enforcement. I wanted to become a special agent with the FBI, and that was, you know, what my dream job was going to be when I was a
Did you do that?
person. I did have that chance.
You did? Oh, okay.
So I went to college and law school solely for that purpose. And when I got out of Syracuse Law School, I came back to Mount Vernon, and I had put in an application for the FBI. It's a long process, as you can imagine. And while I was waiting, I got involved in local government. I became an assistant corporation counsel under the late Mayor Tom Sharp in the city of Mount Vernon. And after 11 months as a city attorney, I was accepted into the bureau. I went down to Quantico, Virginia for training. Then I became a special agent, was assigned to Kentucky. I was in Kentucky for 2 years.
Okay.
Louisville, Kentucky, and then southeastern Kentucky.
Little different than here?
Very different.
Very different.
Certain amount of culture shock for both them and me.
Right, right.
And then I was transferred back to Manhattan. In Kentucky, I was working criminal matters. In Manhattan, I was working espionage. I was an intelligence officer for 2 years. And then what happened was I was having all these moves and transfers, and I was married now. And I decided that it wasn't the lifestyle for creating a family, at least for me, I felt. So I left the bureau, went to work for Bankers Trust Company for 2 years, and then the mayor in Mount Vernon invited me back to Mount Vernon to become a judge. And so I was appointed as a city judge in the city of Mount Vernon, and then I was elected. And then from there, I had a 31-year run as a trial judge, the City Court of Mount Vernon, Westchester County Court, New York State Supreme Court, Surrogates Court for 15 years. After that period of time, I eventually left, went into private practice briefly, and then when Janet DeFiore, my predecessor, had the opportunity to go to the Court of Appeals and become the chief judge, it created an opening to which I wanted to get back in law enforcement and be back in public service because I missed it terribly.
Right.
I love public service.
Well, you're certainly back in it now.
I'm certainly back in it now. So it's great.
Right. So tell us a little bit about, you know, the district attorney's office is in White Plains, right kind of across from the courthouse, I guess.
Well, we're in the courthouse,
bridge.
111 Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard. We're there. We also are in the low rise across the street. We have 2 floors there. We have 3 floors at 111 Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard, the county courthouse. But we also have 8 other branch offices to handle the local court and the incidents that occur throughout the county. And they're in the major cities, as you can imagine. I usually forget one, but you know, there's one in Yonkers and Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, White Plains, Greenburgh. We have Yorktown and Mount Kisco, northern Westchester. So, you know, it's all the major cities, and we have to staff them, those 8 offices, because Westchester is very unique. We have over 40 municipalities, which means there are 40 local courts that we have to cover, and so the court personnel have to cover them, and sometimes they're during the day, some of them are evening courts. So it's a major logistical issue for us with our 118 assistant district attorneys covering the county courthouse and as well as all of the other courts throughout the county.
Just so you know, Tony, I've often recommended that we merge some of our local courts. We were able to do that in the village of Austin, town of Austin, because they were both the Austin court. We did do that, but there are a whole bunch of other courts I think we could merge, but that may not be under your jurisdiction.
verging
so.
of those, and you know local communities are very territorial about their
Right,
about
absolutely,
their area.
absolutely.
Same idea with people wanting to merge the police departments.
Mm-hmm.
And Westchester can be a little confusing, and not just the local municipalities, but fire districts go over different lines. School districts, if you live in North Castle, you maybe have a Bedford address, and your kids go to Armonk schools, and your fire district is Banksville. It's very, very confusing.
Right.
Mount Vernon is Mount Vernon, but
Right.
when you're in northern Westchester, it can be very confusing,
Right.
and it's a law enforcement issue too.
Right. Well, it's we don't realize how many people are involved in this. In your office, the DA's office, how many employees do you have?
Well, we have 118 assistant
118.
district attorneys. These are attorneys, serve at the pleasure of the district attorney. We have 35 investigators, and they are responsible for assisting the assistant district attorneys in putting their cases together, but we also conduct our own investigations. And then we have support personnel, of course.
Right.
So we have a total of about 235 people. Our budget is, officially 27 million or so, but that really doesn't count benefits. That's under a different budget line, the county budget line.
Right.
I mean, if you put it all together, we're probably more in the mid $30 million.
Right. What is the you have different things you have to do, but probably by state law, right? Does state law drive what kind of departments you have within the DA's office, or can you be quite creative and develop your own areas of expertise?
Well, of course, the state law, the penal law, is the driving force of the laws that we would be trying to enforce, and any laws in the state of New York that are considered, criminal activity. That's our responsibility. We have 5 divisions. Obviously, we have a trial division that try the felony cases. We have local court and grand jury that cover the branches, as we spoke about. We have an investigations division, and there we have, within investigations, we have different bureaus. And they can be economic crimes, they could be gangs, guns, and narcotics, it could be public integrity. Domestic violence is in a different group. That comes under our special prosecution. That's another division. And then we have administrative divisions. We have appeals. So, we are, it's a wonderful location for an attorney to be, because not every attorney wants to be a trial attorney. Some like legal research and writing. Some like investigations. And we have a very great opportunity for all of them to wherever their strengths are. If you're a great writer, appeals and motions. If you are a person who likes to be in front of a jury, you have trials. And if you're a person who's a self-starter and likes to be involved in the investigations that go on and that need to go on, whether it be public integrity or gangs and guns and narcotics or whatever, we have attorneys there too doing that type of work.
How do you start the investigation, or the public is watching this, so if the public sees something that is wrong, how do they reach out? Are they the ones many times where you get the initial information about a problem?
Well, it comes in several different ways. Sometimes they'll report it to their local police department. I think most of the time people think that's their first line. If they see something criminal, they're going to contact their local police department. And the local police department will conduct an investigation and sometimes make an arrest, and then the district attorney gets involved in it, or we get involved because they say we're investigating it, we need a search warrant, and then we get involved in helping them prepare the case. It depends on the police departments. Some need more help than others, because when you have large communities like, let's say, Yonkers, they have a large police department, large detective bureau. But when you get to smaller communities, they sometimes need our investigators to assist them. So back to the question, they report it to the police. We have a hotline where people can call the district attorney's office, and they can come in and just file a complaint, and maybe we will then have them meet with one of our investigators if, let's say, they want to report some sort of public integrity type of violation. If they have concerns, if they're an elderly person who they feel they've been scammed. So they can come to us, or they can go to the local police departments. And on occasion, sometimes folks are afraid to go to the local police department for one reason or another. Maybe they have an immigration issue and they feel it's better. They want to reach out because we have an immigration group and we have a hotline there, and we have.
Is that new?
Yes, it is. I
new?
created when I got in. We created an immigrant affairs unit that has the capability of speaking their language, or willing to come to their location, because I mean, we all know the immigrant community is being driven further and further underground, most of the time by the national rhetoric that's there. They are afraid to be involved with law enforcement and the government. They are classic victims. They are victimized by members of their own community as well as people from outside their community, because these predators realize that these folks are generally afraid to report these crimes. They're worried about their status. And so it's the continuing stories. This is an age-old story. I mean, it's been happened. It happened to, my ancestors that came here from Italy.
I'm thinking about that because people came in, and I mean, I've had people call that they're not getting paid. They're immigrants.
Wage theft, right.
Wage theft.
And we're involved in that very much so. With, matter of fact, the Department of Labor just was in our office and gave us an award to people because of our efforts in that area. We recouped millions of dollars for them. It's interesting how the dynamics have changed. It isn't just because they're here and their immigration status is something that concerns them. People that come from foreign countries have come from a government that they don't trust.
Right.
So even though the Italian Americans that came here at the turn of the century were here legally, they were still afraid of the police department and reporting things. And so they became victims of people within their community taking advantage of them and people from outside the community. Now, for the present immigrant community that are here with documentation issues, it's even more scary for them.
Right.
So when they are victims, we need them to report the crimes against them, or if they are witnesses to crimes, we need them to come and assist us, because that's how we prosecute cases. We need witnesses. We need victims. Right. And so, that's why we created the Immigrant Affairs Unit. We go and we will visit them. We also go out and speak to stakeholders that are involved in that community, trying to assure them that we're not going to be reporting them to the immigration authorities. If we're here to try to help them. And it keeps getting more difficult because of the activities recently, of ICE coming into the courthouses.
Yeah,
our victims are coming into the courthouses, our witnesses are coming into the courthouses, and they're hearing about ICE coming in on civil arrests, and they're afraid to come. And that's one of the reasons why new legislation we've been supporting, a safe court type of legislation that's been presented to the legislature, because it is, we can't do our job. And when that community is taken advantage of, it creates a situation where the entire community, all of Westchester, is vulnerable. So we are very concerned about it. It's a major issue for us and for law enforcement in general.
Right. Because some of the issues, I'm just thinking, I think you've done some other work in the domestic violence area also, but that leads back to the immigration issue and people that have been victims of domestic violence not reporting because they're worried about it, but there are a lot of other victims of domestic violence, so that kind of comes through. How do you handle that? Is that a very complicated area?
Well, the domestic violence, we have a specialty, group, our special prosecutions, and these are attorneys that are specifically trained there. They have support personnel to help them. They have connections with other stakeholders that can provide them with safe houses to go to. It's a huge network that through the district attorney's office that we have capabilities of referring people to get them into a safe location, to help them with their problems, to get them advocates. And yes, it is. And it's and there's the language issue, and that so you have to have assistant district attorneys and aides in the office that can assist you in that regard.
Right. So when you're employing people, you really have to think about that.
Well, it's critical for us on all different levels. You know, the district attorney's office has to reflect the community. But even more than that, if we have 20 or 25% of, let's say 20% of the Westchester community, their first language is a foreign language. We have to try to have the capabilities of speaking that language and having people there to help them. Just like our law enforcement partners have to have that ability, because they feel more comfortable speaking in their native language, many of them. So we've tried to expand that, and it's, you know, we have people that speak Italian, we have
a lot of different languages here, right?
Spanish, of course, is very important. We have people that will speak other, you know, languages. It's critical. But you know, there are a multitude of languages. We can't cover every language, but we try to do that. We have to keep our eye open for that. It's very important. And law enforcement is very important. You know, my friends in the FBI, they're very much interested in getting people that speak foreign languages, Arabic, whatever it may be, because it's what the community is. So.
Now, the scammers, do they speak different languages? I'm thinking about the telephone scammers or other scammers. Well, I always get it in English.
Yeah, I get it. I get calls, and sometimes I know this coming from a foreign country. You know, it's from Africa. You could tell the language and what they're saying. But you know, they are out there big time, and the seniors are easily caught up in it, and I speak to people that have been attorneys and been involved in law enforcement, and these scams, some of them are so good that they get caught up on it. You know, calls that your grandson has, you know, been arrested, and you know, send us $5,000 and do this and do that, and they have a long story. I had one where I got a call, and they said to me that we found a cell phone in the parking lot of Lord and Taylor, and I'd like to make arrangements for you to come and get it. And you know, that sort of made sense to me, because I have a wife and 3 daughters, and you know.
Oh, this is your personal story.
My personal phone. And
okay.
And they support Lord and Taylor's. I think they kept it open, you know, for forever. But then I made my calls, and I realized that wasn't so. And you know, of course, this was before I was DA, and I you know, reported it to police, because I was saying they were trying to connect with me for me to physically come down there, and I was trying to figure out what they had in mind. You know, you never know what it is, but if people are calling you, asking you for money, telling you that your electricity is going to be turned off, or it's the IRS or the
I'll go buy those gift certificates and mail them to us, or whatever.
Bitcoins and right. Kind of doesn't take gift cards. You know, just be aware of that.
It's just so hard for people to always have this distrust of somebody on the phone. You know, our nature isn't that, so I think we're much more trustworthy, and we can just get roped into any of these.
It's easy, especially when they're claiming members of your family are in harm's way, and this is what they do. And so, you know, we constantly put out alerts when we're aware of it. You know, and we deal with.
So it comes with, when you do the alert, is that because there's been a lot of phone calls on this certain issue, you've seen a lot, so you just alert people to it?
We try to, if it's something that we become aware of. Sometimes, you know, they're reported to the local police department, and they're investigating it. But if we become aware of it, we will do alerts, or other people will do alerts. The federal government have done alerts. You're just amazed at with everybody knowing that these scams are going on, how many people still get roped in. But they do these, you know, robocalls. So, you know, all they have to do is hit 1 or 2, and you know, it's a success. It costs them nothing. Right.
I had a friend that was caught in London, lost her wallet, so to speak, and she was at the embassy, and so I told the person, I emailed back and said, well, because she's near the embassy, call Nita Lowey, Congresswoman, because she'd have a contact there. So this person who's doing the scam probably thought, this lady is really crazy. But anyway, but I was had, and I remember my son saying, "Oh, Mom, you just did it. You bought right into it." Well, let's talk about the drugs and the opioids and all of those issues. I mean, that the drug use just has to have such an unfortunately a very negative impact on your office in the sense of what you have to deal with.
Well, you know, we've been involved in the war on drugs for 100 years. And back in the 80s, when I was sitting in the Special Narcotics Part, it was crack cocaine.
That's true. Right.
Now,
it just changes.
Now
right?
we have the opioid crisis, and from 2015 to 2016, there was a double an increase with doubled, like 200%, the number of overdoses. And then we created a task force, a joint task force with the county police, putting several of our investigators, county police investigators, analysts from the Westchester Intelligence Center to help local police departments. And we're trying to see, what sort of success we can have. And we've been having a lot of success trying to address it, but still it's on the rise. I would say from 2016 to 2017, we had approximately, let's say, 147 overdoses in the county, of which maybe 47 or so were fatal. And then last year, within the same period, we were up to, let's say, 157. These numbers are very close, with maybe 50. When we did the numbers, there was about a 6% increase
Right.
On both overdose numbers and as well as fatalities. Narcan has been very successful, and these are just the ones that are reported to us.
Right.
You just
Because
don't know which
there are
one you're
probably a
missing.
lot of saves with Narcan
Correct.
that may not get
And
reported.
it has been of tremendous value. So the other thing is, though, these overdoses are occurring. The numbers are going to be 27 to 30 different communities in Westchester. So people can't sit back and say, "Oh, it's not in my community."
Right.
It is
It's everywhere.
everywhere. And you'd be very surprised when you look at some of the statistics, where there were, if you looked at the number of people that lived in that area and the number of overdoses as compared to a more populous community, how much, the difference. You'd be surprised. You might think it was going to happen in the more populous areas, and there was more up in, let's say, northern Westchester. So it is something that we created this task force. We are trying to, when we do have an overdose and there's a fatality, we are not just treating it as an accidental fatality, we are trying to treat it almost as a homicide investigation, so we can see and try to track down where these narcotics came from, look at the product that's there, and see if we can trace it, and to assist us in our operations. And we are vigorously working these cases.
But it sounds like it just doesn't, there's so little improvement. Even when there's so many people that have been helped, but it still just keeps going on and on.
It is, but
right?
yes, the numbers are still increasing. But if 3 years ago it was a 100 or 200% increase from year to year,
right,
and
that's
now
true.
we're down to 5%
Right,
to
that's
6%.
good, right.
We're
Right.
closing the gap on it, but it is a continuing battle, and the battle always has to be fought from a lot of different ends. First of all, what's making these drugs so dangerous is that the fentanyl that's in it. Fentanyl is 100 times more powerful. You just need a little bit of it in it, and people that take it, most of them will immediately overdose. And there are a lot of counterfeit drugs out there. So it's a young person who is taking drugs, painkillers from their house, their
The medicine
parents have
cabinet,
it, the medicine
right.
cabinet,
Yep.
and they think they can handle it. When they get a counterfeit, they think they can handle it, but if it's counterfeit and it's laced with fentanyl, they're going to overdose. So it is something that is very serious and very concerning to us. But we are trying to make progress. But at the same time, you can't just bail the boat out. Okay, you have to stick your finger in the bottom of the boat and stop the water from coming in as you bail it out.
And where are most of the drugs coming in? Are we on a line on a railroad from the city or Virginia, or do we have any idea?
They come from South America and coming up through Mexico and coming up the I-95 corridor. They can be transported, from there. Some have come in from Asia, and somehow or other they'll come in. Some from Canada. They're very creative on how they do these things, and of course, we deal with what is occurring in our location, but it's the DEA and the federal authorities that have to be involved in, what is going on.
Right.
But we work at the local level, and then we try to conduct our investigations more detailed to try to move it up from the person on the street to the person that they're getting supplied by to the person they're getting supplied by. And usually, one step up is New York City. That's where it's coming in from, the Bronx or wherever it may be, and then where are they getting it from?
Right.
And now we're getting outside our jurisdiction.
Right. But it's interesting, Tony, because some people think that you should just pick up the person who's been on the street selling it. But my understanding is you really, as you said, you want to find the real seller.
Yes, you want the main supplier, so you do try to work your way up. But look, we do undercover operations, we do undercover buys, and we get those folks. But from that information, we also try to track up the line through our different investigative techniques, which I'm not going to talk about.
Right. Okay. That's all right. Well, what are some other? I mean, mail theft. That's a new one. Wow.
Well,
Isn't it new?
We're doing a good job now, but what happened was it came to us. First, it was happening in the Bronx and New York City. When the Postal Service jumped on in New York City and changed the boxes and made them more difficult to take it.
You put a little slip in instead of pulling the whole thing down.
There were a lot of things that were going on.
Yes.
First of all, they could go fishing. They could put like a sticky stuff and go down there and pull things out.
Right.
But the thing that was concerning us is that they were getting keys to the boxes, and that they were coming from within the Postal Service.
Right.
So there were employees involved.
Right.
After they changed all the boxes and made it more difficult in the Bronx, the bad people said, okay, let's come to Westchester. And they started doing it in Westchester. And, we reached out to the postal inspectors, and we reached out to Nita Lowy and to our legislators and everyone, starting to raise hell that, they had insufficient resources to try to address this. We had local police departments surveilling them and making arrests. But the problem is, tampering with the mail is a federal crime. It's a felony in the federal law. But under state law, all we could usually get them with is that they tampered with the box. Well, how much did they damage the box?
Okay.
It was a scratch.
Right.
Did they break a lock? It's a
So
misdemeanor.
do we need legislation on that?
We have federal legislation. It's a federal case.
Right.
If we caught them and they had the checks, now we have them in possession of stolen property, forged instruments, doing things like that, and we could turn it into felonies. By our bringing it to the attention and screaming out about it, we did get more resources in, and things have subsided. We have made arrests, we have indictments, we have sent some people to jail, and the feds have jumped on it on their own. And so that epidemic has slowed down now, and it's sort of disappeared.
Right.
But they had to change all the boxes so that they weren't easy to get into.
It's amazing. There's always something new that comes along, and then we're concluding. But just people stealing the packages at your front door. That's another one that just started. But we don't have time to get into that.
But I will say one thing about some of these mail thefts and some of these activities and identity thefts that are occurring. There are gangs that have moved away from some of the violent crimes and moved into these areas, and they become very sophisticated, and they steal your identity, and then they go out and they create bank accounts, and they'll go out and buy cars. And if you recall, not too long ago, we busted a whole group that were involved in going to Lexus dealers and other dealerships, high-end cars, and with phony identification, and getting cars, and then taking those cars and bringing them to cargo carriers to send them to Africa.
Right.
So,
well, you have a lot of work to do, always, and unfortunately there's so many more activities, but I just want to thank you for being here today, Tony, and for the audience, just if you have any questions, just give us a phone call, 914-941-1111. Thank you so much for watching.